If you're a maintenance supervisor at a manufacturing facility and your machinery isn't working right, Grainger knows you need to understand what's wrong as soon as possible. So when a conveyor motor falters, Grainger offers diagnostic tools like calibration kits and multimeters to help you identify and fix the problem. With Grainger, you can be confident you have everything you need to keep your facility running smoothly. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
If you're looking for more horror outside of the mainstream, look no further than Unsung Horrors, a podcast about underseen horror movies. I'm Lance.
And I'm Erica. Every other week, we'll cover a horror movie with fewer than 1,000 views on Letterboxd. We'll even give you double feature recommendations to pair with the movies we discuss.
From gothic to shot on video, from slashers to comedies, from giallo to J-horror, we'll cover all the subgenres. So join us as we unearth these hidden gems of horror.
Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, all at Unsung Horrors, available wherever you listen to podcasts. And part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Kulturecast. I'm Chris Stachiw, and I'm joined by the man who put the Mike White in Mike White March. Once again, the host of the projection booth, Mr. Mike White.
Das vidanya.
As a Ukrainian, we have a contentious relationship with the Russian people, to say the least. Crimea is part of Ukraine, not part of Russia. However, we're not talking about my feelings towards the Russian people. We're going to be talking about Konstantin Lopushansky's Dead Man's Letters, and we're also going to have an interview with the director, along with his translator, who will be helping to let us know what he's saying, because his English is not as good as his Russian, and let's be honest, my Russian is nowhere near as good as my English, and my English is pretty bad as it is.
It's pretty awful.
Yeah, boy, isn't it? It's just the bing, sad. Why are we watching international films? Gone with the Wind is the only movie we should be watching, let's be honest. That's what Donald Trump said. That's the only thing we should be watching. But, yeah, we're going to be talking about Dead Man's Letters. So, Mike, since you programmed this month, since this is Mike White March, since you also spoke with the director, I am curious, what drew you to pick Dead Man's Letters for this month?
Well, I'm going to sound a little bit like a broken record, because I've said this before. This is a movie that I've had on my to-watch list for the longest darn time. I read about this, probably in the late 90s, early 2000s, and was just told, hey, this is a really good movie. You should see this. And then when I saw that poster image, I said, whatever this poster is for, I want to see this movie. So that's it. And now you're bearing the brunt of my procrastination. Sorry, Chris.
Well, here's the thing. I don't mind it, because for the most part, you have not led me astray. Frankly, I would say that you haven't led me astray at all.
Well, good.
So I'm not sitting here saying, well, thanks for wasting my fucking time, Mike. I genuinely appreciate really working outside of my comfort zone as a film watcher, and I think everyone should. Frankly, I think if you're turned off by a film having subtitles, or it may be challenging your preconceived notions about certain topics, that's a good thing. Like, you should want to enrich yourself with more kind of challenging film. And I think that is important. I mean, as someone who watches a lot of movies, as do you, as probably you do, listener, working outside of your comfort zone is much more interesting than watching every single, I don't know. I mean, as much as I love the Marvel movies, if that was all I watched, I'd probably pull my hair out. So working
Those aren't really movies, right? They're
roller coasters.
Roller coasters, yeah.
Okay. How many Oscars did you win? How good was that movie? That's what I thought. That's how derivative was that film of all your other gangster films? Oh, it was entirely derivative. Great, thanks, Marty. Just Go make something else with Leonardo DiCaprio and leave everybody alone. And I'm saying that as someone who loves Scorsese. I mean, Goodfellas is one of my favorite films, and even I was like, yeah, Irishman, go away. But yeah, the issue is with something like this film, which is going to be hard for you to find if you search it down. It is subtitled throughout the entire film, and there's very little dialogue, frankly. Kind of in a way that we've seen with some of the other films that we've looked at that are foreign films that specifically Mike has picked. It's a film that kind of is going to challenge you as a film watcher, but that's okay. That should be more exciting than just going and watching, I don't know, something else. So, but no, this was not an affront to me in any form or fashion. So,
well, good.
Yeah. That being said, though, I really liked it.
Oh, excellent. I'm so glad to hear that.
Did you like it?
I did. It was not what I was expecting whatsoever.
The poster makes it look like something else entirely.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the poster's fantastic. We should probably describe it for folks at home. So it almost looks like, a prog rock album cover or something.
Yeah, it does. It's like the Earth, half of the Earth, and then it's a man's face, the actor Rolan Bykov, who plays the main character. It's like his face, and like the Earth is like melting on his head, and then there's a mushroom cloud off the top of the Earth. It's super fucking metal is what it is.
Yeah. Oh, it's totally metal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's super cool. Like I like looked at the poster and I was like, fuck, this is a cool ass poster. And then the film is, like you said, completely the opposite. It is a 180 from what I was expecting.
So this was 1986 this was made, and I don't know if this was made before Chernobyl or after Chernobyl, but it is right there with Chernobyl as an experience, as a historical event. And I didn't know what the look of this movie was going to be, and that was one of the first things that really struck me about this was it looks like it was shot in black and white entirely and then tinted throughout the entire thing, and then the tinting changes depending on what part of the movie you're in.
If you showed this to someone and did not tell them the year that it was filmed, there is no way in hell anyone would say 86.
Right. No, it doesn't look like it.
No, it looks like Stalker.
Well, that really makes a lot of sense because
Right.
this was actually co-written by one of the guys that wrote
Right.
Roadside Picnic, Boris Strugatsky.
Yeah, but my point is, a Stalker is also a film that, utilizes black and white and kind of and all that. And Stalker came out in 79, and it doesn't even look like it was filmed in 79. So yeah, it's there's a lot going on here. But the first thing you will notice the moment you start watching this film is if you're looking at other science fiction films from the 80s, this is about as stylish as you can get without any style at all, if that makes sense. It's toned down. It's not like RoboCop or Terminator that has like a very firmly rooted and planted in the 80s sense of style. And like we've already mentioned, it's much closer to Stalker because, yeah, it's co-written by one half of the writing duo that wrote Stalker and the book that the film is based off of. But yeah, it's just looking at the film before we even talk about the plot, just watching the film, it must have been an undertaking to create this film. It has to have been.
And Lopushansky was also a student of Tarkovsky, so that makes a lot of sense as well. In fact, I think did he even work on, he was an assistant on Stalker.
Yeah, it feels, if you've watched Stalker and you like Stalker, this is kind of like a spiritual sequel in a way to it. I mean, there's so much that you can draw.
You won't see the engineer that slams the Nissan Rogue's door 13,920 times. Or the corrosive chamber that simulates 15 years of life in 5 months. Or the Rogue heat-baked for over 300 combined hours. What you will see is a vehicle that can take punch after punch and keep rolling. Nissan, #1 in new vehicle quality among mainstream brands by J.D. Power. We put it through the worst, so you get its best. For JD Power 2025 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Awards based on 2025 model year. Newer models may be shown.
Hello, my name is Kevin Tudor, and I'm one of the 3 hosts of Almost Major, a film podcast dissecting many major indie studios and the films they release. Every week, myself, Charlie Nash, and Bryden Doyle discuss overlooked, forgotten, or bona fide classic indie films via studio-specific miniseries. We've previously covered numerous films from Artisan Entertainment, Lionsgate Films, and New Line Cinema. Titles including The Blair Witch Project, American Psycho, Dogville, But I'm a Cheerleader, Saw, Requiem for a Dream, and Ringmaster, you know, the Jerry Springer film. Anyways, we have a fun time every week and we hope you will join us. Subscribe to Almost Major wherever you get your podcasts. Now proudly a part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
Parallels to this in Stalker. And look, Stalker went on to influence a lot of things. Obviously, the Metro 2033 series that's become immensely popular in Russia. I would say that this film influenced a lot of like current video games like Fallout. A lot of like very similar iconography and imagery of kind of like a post-nuclear war world. But God, it's just looking at this film, not talking anything about the plot, just looking at the film. It's just gorgeous.
The other thing that this reminds me of is the films of Guy Madden, especially the earliest ones, things like Gimli Hospital or Archangel. Just that this feels like it escaped from another era kind of thing. Like like you said, this does not feel like 86. This feels like maybe 36 or 46. I mean, this feels very old.
Which, again, is perfectly fine because I appreciate that about it. I appreciate that it doesn't feel like every other film from the 80s that I've seen that's science fiction. And look, while this is a sci-fi film, it is also very much an art house film. It would not play at your local multiplex in 86. This would I'm not even sure if you could as an American see this film in 86 or 87. I know that it played at the Toronto International Film Festival in 87. I don't know how you could have seen this otherwise.
Yeah, it maybe going to a video store that had a lot of Russian people going there, but then finding a subtitled version of it is going to be tough. I mean, I'm sure that probably Mosfilm put this out on DVD a few years ago, but it's not like something you're going to just stumble across.
And also take into account that in 86, we're still dealing with the fact that the Soviet Union exists. This is a Soviet science fiction film, not Russian. It is a film created in the former USSR by a director who was born in Ukraine, but Ukraine was still part of the USSR. So there's also that in trying to get to see this film. It must have been a massive undertaking to get this film made and then also to get it in front of people. I mean, they showed it at Cannes as well. But yeah, trying to get to see this as an American in the 80s would have been, I feel like, massively impossible.
Yeah, especially pre-1989. I mean, I'm not sure how Glasnost and Perestroika and all those things, how that affected the film industry. I know that, Russia has always been, or Soviet Union has always been known as being a very film-centric place. But yeah, I don't know how easy or difficult it was. I mean, I remember the 2 VHS set of Stalker coming out in the early 80s, and that was pretty remarkable to be able to see that film.
Well, and look, I mean, if you haven't...
Sorry, early 90s. Sorry, didn't mean early 80s.
Well, and if you haven't seen Stalker, I wouldn't rush and watch this first. You need to see Stalker first. Like, you have to. Because I think, and, obviously last year, you and I on your podcast, The Projection Booth, talked about Annihilation, which cops from Stalker. It doesn't really cop from this very much, but it cops from Stalker a lot. And I had to watch Stalker for that podcast. Watching Stalker really is like it's a film that I think anyone who seriously wants to be part of like a conversation about film needs to watch, because there's so much in that film that influences things we watch now. and like directors that we watch now, and like the way that directors we watch now do things in frame shots. And this, and like you said, with Lopushansky really working with Tarkovsky and everything, it makes so much sense, because there's so much in this film that feels just not lifted out of Stalker, but owes a lot to what Stalker did to film.
Yeah, Lopushansky was definitely a very good student of Tarkovsky.
Yeah. So the film follows Rolan Bykov as Professor Larsen, who is a Nobel Prize-winning scientist who is trying to keep some adults, and he's trying to keep adults and children alive in a basement of a museum of history. It's not ever said where. We can assume it's somewhere in the USSR. And throughout the film, he's kind of has this interior monologue where he's talking to his son, who is more than likely, it's assumed that he's dead. And throughout the film, you find out that there was a nuclear accident, and the police are keeping healthy people in. They're allowing healthy people to come into the bunkers, and they're keeping the people who are not healthy away. And that's the entire crux of the film. And so much goes on in between that main setup and through the end of the film. And the film is barely an hour and a half long.
Yeah, as we're sitting here in, week 4, week 5 of the coronavirus, it is just like, okay, yeah, this feels really similar with the whole, keep these people separated out of here. And it's like, all right, great.
Well, and, look, I think it does a really good job of portraying the fallout of a nuclear war.
Is it even a nuclear war, or is it just a nuclear accident?
Well, see, that's the thing. The way I interpret it is they launched a nuke by accident, and then there was retaliation.
I wasn't even sure, because it felt like... Okay, so you're right. There's a missile that's being launched.
But it was by accident.
And then he is drinking his coffee, and he can't spit out the order or whatever to disarm it or to not do the launch.
Which is fucking hilarious.
Yes.
Like, it is so black in like the blackest comedy sense that is why humanity is doomed, is because one guy couldn't spit out his coffee fast enough to stop the missile launch from what I would assume is instigating World War III. Mm-hmm. Turning from the Cold War into an actual war. And boy, I think that the setup is just, I think it's phenomenal. I think it's super fucked up, but in a really interesting way. It's not just your usual, these countries are at war. It's like, no, technology is the reason because it's a computer error that they couldn't stop. So it's technology's fault. And there's a lot of kind of talking about technology and humanity getting to the point where they could essentially ruin themselves with technology.
There's also some interesting humor when it comes to the woman that lives in the museum with them, who walks around, if not fully naked, at least topless, because she's like, oh yeah, we're going to mutate and we need to keep our clothes off because otherwise we won't mutate.
Yeah, it's super weird. And then they talk about how they don't know who's going to take over. Is it going to be aliens or mutants? And the one guy just goes, mutants? Like, yeah, dude, mutants. Because when people get irradiated in fiction, they start to become mutants.
That's correct.
You won't see the engineer that slams the Nissan Rogue's door 13,920 times. Or the corrosive chamber that simulates 15 years of life in 5 months. Or the Rogue heat-baked for over 300 combined hours. What you will see is a vehicle that can take punch after punch and keep rolling. Nissan, #1 in new vehicle quality among mainstream brands by J.D. Power. We put it through the worst, so you get its best. For J.D. Power 2025 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Awards based on 2025 model year. Newer models may be shown.
Hello, this is Aaron West. I am the author of the A24 New Wave. In this book, I look at A24's output and I make the argument that we are in a new wave movement right now. A24 plays a major role. This book has a supplemental podcast where each episode is a brief conversation about an A24 related topic, whether an actor, director, or even a genre. As I continue research for the book and conduct interviews, I expect to record podcast episodes with people involved with the company. You can find the podcast at cinejourneys.com or wherever you find podcasts, and we are proud to be members of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network.
That's the way it works, and this film is no different. I mean, we don't get to see them, but I mean, these people are clearly sick. These people have clearly been irradiated into the ground, and that's why they're not allowed to go into these bunkers, so they have to live above them.
The other tie I see, looking at this and looking at some of the other Lopushansky films I've watched for this month, he likes to use children quite a bit in his films, and I see a tie between the Stalker's daughter from Stalker with her mental powers, and then some of the kids will show up in Ugly Swans, which is a few films down the road, but also just all the kids that are there with Professor Larsen, and it's almost a Mad Max Thunderdome kind of thing, with like the way that he takes care of these kids and the way that they take care of him. I was also reminded of Logan.
Yeah, it's very, I mean, look, all of those films are set into the post quote-unquote apocalypse. And so, you know, the idea of children being the future makes sense. And it works in a way, and it has always kind of worked as a narrative in these styles of fiction. And it works here because the character of Professor Larsen is really hopeful in a way that none of the other characters are. Can we also talk about the fact that I don't think this is actually supposed to be set in Russia?
I can see that.
I think it's supposed to be set in the United States. Because the character's name is Professor Larsen.
Right.
You know, traditional Russian name Larsen.
Yeah. And some of the other names, Anna and Teresa, it's not like they are what I would consider to be, you know, not like the actors' names of Svetlana or Vladimir or Natalia.
Or Václav or Victor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think, I mean, regardless of where it's set, it's just this idea of, I guess, the world outside being overwhelming and you just not wanting to continue is really depressing. But the character of Professor Larsen is such kind of like a beacon of hope.
Well, it's also easier if we were to say that this is America and America fucked up and they're the ones that caused the war.
Yeah, I think it's funnier that way.
Yeah.
And look, let's not get too high horse preachy, but over-reliance on technology, I mean, that's what this film is preaching against, in a way. Because they're talking about how, like, science led to this. Like, this is our fault. And I think it's funnier that, obviously, it's a Nobel laureate who's like, this is our fault. Like, science did this. And I find that just, again, kind of, like, really kind of dark humor is like, science did this, and I'm a scientist. I'm the reason this happened, like, in a way. And it's super depressing. But it's also not depressing because you get the sense throughout the film that the character of the professor is really holding on for hope when everyone around him is just like, yeah, we're done. Or we're going to the safe bunker and abandoning children.
Right. Well, it's not like, you know, we would ever send out any sort of missile warning that Hawaii was going to get blown off the map.
By accident.
Right.
Yeah. But hey, one guy asleep at the switch who didn't hear that it was a training exercise did it anyways. So there's a lot of parallels that you can draw. You know.
Oh yeah.
And again I find that to be oddly kind of prescient in a way that the film probably didn't intend to be, because there is a lot going on in this film that feels like you could set this now and it would make perfect sense. And frankly, a lot of the stuff that, just looking at it, it's the timeless themes of the film that work the best. Like the timeless theme of hope and kind of feeling like you don't have any hope, and the character, I don't know what the character's name is, but the character who gives that monologue and then goes and kills himself is the best part of this film.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really kind of heartbreaking.
Yeah. Because he's like, we made art, and we knew art was fragile and kind of useless, but we did it because of love, and we, having love is important, and while love might seem useless compared to science and technology, it still is important, and I love all of you, and I'm going to take myself out of the equation by choice. And it is very heartbreaking.
I'm very curious, since this is set in a museum, what Visitor to a Museum is going to be like when we talk about that in a few weeks.
Yeah, I'm curious as well. I mean, again, the film on the face of it is rather dour and really kind of not depressing, but it has a very sad, overwhelmingly sad tone to it, but it is ultimately a film about having hope. And I'm curious if some of these other films this month are going to have that similar feeling to them. I don't know. I mean, look, the whole nuclear war thing, I feel like now in 2020, like you said, it does feel kind of more urgent in a way. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, but with me growing up when the Cold War was still on, I mean, I look at kids today having drills for active shooters, and I'm just like, yeah, we didn't necessarily have drills about nuclear annihilation, but we knew that if a bomb dropped, we would just all be blown away anyway. So I basically lived in fear, growing up, of just like, okay, any minute now, Reagan's going to lose his fucking mind and we're all going to be blown off the planet.
Mike White, serial hater of Ronald Reagan. When given the opportunity, he will shit on Reagan's grave.
I will shit on Reagan, yes.
That's fine. Having grown up in the 90s, we didn't really even have active shooter drills.
No, I don't imagine he would.
We didn't have drills for nuclear missiles either. So
right. Yeah, no, we would look back at things like, Duck and Cover and those, educational films from the 50s and just be like, yeah, that's hilarious because if a nuclear bomb dropped, you're not going to be able to hide under a desk. So we had bomb shelters everywhere. And remember the symbols and seeing where they were at in every single school that I attended, but we didn't have drills for that.
Yeah, I don't remember what we had drills for. We had drills for fires.
Yeah.
Fire drill, that's it. But that's rather self-contained to the school.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, nuclear drills for being nuked. Yeah, I mean, duck and cover, great. So you're irradiated under your desk as opposed to in front of your desk, great. Awesome.
Yeah, and then we had great things like, The Day After and Threads and all these wonderful movies. I mean, when they showed The Day After on TV when I was a kid, that was about the scariest fucking thing in the world.
See, I've never seen it, but I've heard that echoed time and time again.
Yeah, I would say that Threads is probably a much better film, but Day After it definitely fucked me up.
Well, and I can imagine seeing this in 86, 87. This would be a really, not traumatizing film, but it would be really hard to watch.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, this could happen, like, at any point.
Yeah, I kept wondering, like, from a technical point of view, were they even shooting sync sound on something like this? Because so much of this movie takes place with people wearing gas masks that I was just like, did you guys just save all that money and do all the audio in post? Because
I think it sure sounds like it.
Right? Okay.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it was all done in post, which would obviously be the cost-effective way to do it.
Right, because even the letters from the dead man of the title, or the dead man's letters, those are all in Professor Larsen's head.
Yeah. That's all kind of voiceover. That's VO, which I found that part of the film to be interesting because, they use that as kind of the framing device that these are his kind of letters to his son. But, his son obviously is long dead. And his son, probably died with the rest of them, and they were all burned up on the surface. And it's an interesting framing device. But also, the film's title lets you know right from the get-go that this character is not going to make it to the end of the film.
Right.
Which, I don't know how I feel about that. I kind of don't like when the film just kind of outright spoils it. But for this film, it doesn't bother me because that's not what this film's not trying to, like, pull any punches or have, like, a twist to it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's like, John dies at the end, but then he actually doesn't. But at least with this one, Professor Larsen, his legacy will live on, and they've got the whole Christmas ritual, which will help, kind of cement him into the next generation's mythology.
Yeah, and again, I really like the character of Professor Larsen because it's nice to have a character in these kinds of nuclear war films that is just doing what he can to get by to help people. And he's not, running around and sneaking into places. He's just literally buying cans of stuff to get medicine for his dying wife. It's a very understated film in a way that we don't get to see a lot of stuff like talking about nuclear war and the fallout of the kind of nuclear apocalypse. We don't get to see a lot of that, especially in Western films talking about nuclear war. Mm-hmm. Most of the I don't know, like for some reason, Eastern European cinema does nuclear war better than anybody else. You know what I mean? I don't understand why. Yeah,
that is a really good point. I mean, we watched for the last Checktember on the projection booth, we watched end of August at the Hotel Ozone, which is super dire and starts off with all these different VOs, all these different languages counting down for the initial missile launch that wipes humanity off the map. And it's really fucking stark. And the whole movie really is very, very stark, all black and white, and just, again, very hopeless.
I do like that this film didn't do black and white.
Yeah. It was a nice touch. I thought it was very good. And then it also helped with the missile footage that they were able to just kind of blow that out and make it look like it belonged with the rest of the footage.
Yeah, it's clearly the same footage that you've seen a million times dealing with the nuclear missile launch and kind of how they were blowing up buildings and stuff to see what that did. But it works. It works so well in this, I almost forgot that it wasn't just something else that they copped and put in the film.
Yeah.
So let's take a quick break and we will play the interview that Mike did with Konstantin Lopushansky, the director of the film, by way of his translator, or the translator that we found, we being you, Mike, Jenny Federovich.
I don't think you started out as a filmmaker necessarily. You seem to have a wide career before you got into filmmaking, and I'm curious how you made that transition into it.
First, he was a musician. He finished the musical conservatory. So then he went on to further study in the conservatory, and then he was becoming a theater director in St. Petersburg. So after a bit, he understood that that's not where his heart was, and that's not something that he wanted to pursue. So he went and applied to become a film director in Moscow, at a particular place that he could say a few words about later. So he said that he got extremely lucky that he went to this place. And the main reason being, it was 1977. There was tremendous amount of censorship in the Soviet Union. I mean, you couldn't just watch any foreign movie that you wanted. So everything was quite censored. And the lucky part was that in that particular place, in that university, they were able to watch all foreign films of all kinds. And the people who taught there were absolutely incredible. You know, it was Tarkovsky, Konchalovsky, and
Nita, Latяну, Панфилов, лекции читали и о Селиане, приезжал там Лариса Шипитько.
So he feels like he got so lucky that he in particular in that time was able to join that university.
После этого была вторая удача у меня. Меня Тарковский взял к себе.
So the second luckiest thing that had ever happened to him is Tarkovsky took him in to work on Stalker, which was his second educational key.
на киностудию «Ленфильм», где произошла третья удачная история. В эти годы, как я повторяю, очень сильной цензуры.
Yeah, and after that he came back to Leningrad, which is now St. Petersburg, which is where the third lucky story had happened to him.
Это объединение, куда входили, руководил Чепец, входили Авербах.
So what had happened, even though it was time of a censorship, there was an incredible group of directors that were looking for young directors, which is where he ended up in 1980. And somehow the government just let them create and be themselves and kind of left them alone at that point. So he was incredibly lucky to become a part of that.
What was that experience like for him working on Stalker? And I imagine he got to meet Boris Strugatsky because he would go on to work with him a few times, or at least adapt his work.
Working for Tarkovsky, he was a student at the time because Tarkovsky was lecturing at this particular university that he was in, and it was just a job of a student, and he would give him assignments just like other people, and they would go on to do those assignments. He met a lot of actors, obviously. He met Tarkovsky's whole entire crew, which was a good experience. So at that point, he had not interacted or met Strugatsky yet, which that would come later.
I know that he did at least one short film, if not two, before he did his first feature. And what was that experience like for him making those early shorts?
The most memorable short film that to him was Solo, which got to travel across the festivals quite a bit in international festivals. It was a very dark film. It was about musicians during...
You won't see the engineer that slams the Nissan Rogue's door 13,920 times. Or the corrosive chamber that simulates 15 years of life in 5 months. Or the Rogue heat-baked for over 300 combined hours. What you will see is a vehicle that can take punch after punch and keep rolling. Nissan, #1 in new vehicle quality among mainstream brands by J.D. Power. We put it through the worst, so you get its best. For J.D. Power 2025 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Awards based on 2025 model year. Newer models may be shown.
Hello and welcome to Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys. My name is Hunter. In this podcast, I'll be joined by a different guest each week to discuss a classic Western movie or TV show. I've been a fan of classic Westerns for as long as I can remember, and in recent years, they've become very nostalgic for me. I love the aesthetic, the tropes, and I love seeing different filmmakers' takes on them. At their best, they're incredibly entertaining, rewatchable, and some of my all-time favorite movies are Westerns. We'll mostly focus on Western movies made in Hollywood, but we'll also be covering spaghetti Westerns, and one thing I'm very excited to get into are Western TV shows. I've got some amazing guests coming on the show, film professors, historians, and podcasters. And Tumbleweeds and TV Cowboys is part of the Someone's Favorite Productions podcast network, and many guests on the show will be from other shows on the network. Thanks for listening.
The blockade of the Leningrad during World War II, and their last concert that they were playing for the Allied forces. He mentions the fact that, like, he referred to working in Leningrad at that time, St. Petersburg later. Amongst the group of this very creative directors that were allowed to do more things than others. And he says the only reason that film saw the light of day is because he was in that particular atmosphere. Had he been in Russia, he doesn't think that film would have ever gotten released. And after that, it took him a while to get to his first feature, which was Dead Man's Letters. And that's where he started interaction with Strugatsky. And the reason why that period of time took place is he feels that he probably knows that he was blacklisted due to his work with Tarkovsky, who already left at that time. So during the blacklist period, he wasn't really able to get anything going and wasn't able to create.
Вот. Он, вероятно, в какой-то мере слышал про меня, помнил, я не знаю. Но, в общем, возникло общение с ним. Тем более, что я писал сценарий совместно с его учеником, писателем, сейчас известным, Вячеславом Рыбаковым, тогда тоже молодым писателем.
He said it was a really, really unique and interesting story how Dead Man's Letters were created.
Удивительная история, связанная с тем, как создавался фильм «Письма мертвого человека». Можно привести, правда.
So imagine this, and I know it's probably hard to imagine because we keep talking about censorship, but, you know, I lived it myself as well, so I'm pretty aware. So imagine 1983, a young director that has never made a full feature wants to make a super controversial film about where the whole entire universe dies from nuclear war. There is no bad Americans, there is no good Russians, and there is a religious ending. I mean, that's pretty mind-blowing for, for a Soviet censorship government person to read. And how that ever came out is probably a mystery, for sure.
Я и Рыбаков изложили Стругацкому, какой сценарий у нас, что мы хотим. Он сказал, ребята...
When they came to Strugatsky, they said, here's the script. Strugatsky said, you do understand you're going to go to jail. That's insane. You can't do this. However, he was still interested, and he started working on a script with them.
Понятно, почему я очень хотел снять это кино, и я по совету моих московских друзей обратился, тогда только образовался комитет советских ученых против ядерной войны.
So at that time, he decided, he doesn't know why he decided that, he decided to go to the committee of the Soviet scientists against nuclear war. There was a scientist by the name of Bykov that he was particularly dealing with.
Да, и я, скажу, вот сценарий, как раз о тех концептах, которые вы излагаете.
So he went to the scientist and he said, this is really along the lines of what you're trying to do. It's about nuclear fallout. You know, I am a young director, up and coming. Can I please gain some of your support? So the scientists, they wrote a letter. And with that letter, he went back to the film committee that was disapproving what kind of content was going to be released through censorship. And once they saw the letter, they had no choice. They're like, okay, well, if he's supported by the scientific community, I think we're going to have to let him do this. Soviet ingenuity.
И тогда они решили, что
So they said if we're going to allow him to make this film, that's fine. We're going to have to groom him to change the script. It needs to have some really bad Americans that are going to be at fault at everything. And then there's absolutely no religious ending. They wrote kind of a fake script, not fake, but they wrote like a fake script to cover up the real script. So the real script was inside, and outside they created the scenes that would satisfy the censorship people that would be reading it. He said you have to be very, very young and somewhat just super gutsy, young and gutsy to be able to do something like this. I mean, it's such a crazy and not a safe move, you know? So Strugatsky said, what a great idea, a wonderful move on your part, but now you're for sure going to jail, 100%.
То есть такое состояние начал эти съемки. Дальше в двух словах, чтобы сказать, их постоянно контролировали.
It was so difficult to make this movie because every day, the executives from the studio would be on set telling him that they're going to shut this down. They were extremely controlling, and it was basically hell. Lucky for him, 1985, Gorbachev came to power, so already you could feel the government was shifting and the structure of the government was starting to shift.
Но вот к концу 1985 года, несмотря на все это, открылось, что не сняты сцены, которые хотела редактура, что на самом деле сценарий не тот.
In late 1985, they found out that he wasn't shooting the scenes that he was supposed to shoot, that it was a fake, and there was a huge scandal, big blowout, and they shut down the movie.
Но в это время, это уже был 86 год, и уже был пятый съезд кинематографистов, атмосфера вообще была совершенно другая. Первое объединение, в котором я все это делал, оно меня очень сильно поддержало. И Герман, и Аронович особенно активно, и там его жена Кармалита. Просто многие поддержали, сказали, а что такое, обижать молодого режиссера, дайте ему закончить.
In 1986, he got a lot of support from what he earlier mentioned, the group of German, Aronovich. There were people that were working at Len Film, and they started saying, come on, let him finish his film. He's young, it's his film. So nobody wanted a huge scandal, so they basically let him finish his film. He said he got a call on April 26th, and he was printing the first copy of this film, and that was the day that Chernobyl catastrophe took place. In 1986, he got a lot of support from what he earlier mentioned, the group of German, Aronovich. There were people that were working at Len Film. And they started saying, come on, let him finish his film. He's young, it's his film. So nobody wanted a huge scandal, so they basically let him finish his film. He said he got a call on April 26th, and he was printing the first copy of this film, and that was the day that Chernobyl catastrophe took place. He had printed the copy of his film when that went down.
I wondered where this was in the timeline with Chernobyl.
He had printed the copy of his film when that went down. Crazy.
And then, и вот, но дальше все-таки была непонятна судьба картины.
You won't see the engineer that slams the Nissan Rogue's door 13,920 times. Or the corrosive chamber that simulates 15 years of life in 5 months. Or the Rogue heat-baked for over 300 combined hours. What you will see is a vehicle that can take punch after punch and keep rolling. Nissan, #1 in new vehicle quality among mainstream brands by J.D. Power. We put it through the worst, so you get its best. For J.D. Power 2025 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Awards based on 2025 model year. Newer models may be shown.
Hey, this is Jason Kleberg from the Force 5 podcast, a show that forces a guest to come up with a movie-themed top 5 list topic, and then we reveal our picks on air. Top 5 heist films, top 5 tearjerkers, top 5 movie dogs. Every show you'll be asking yourself, what would be on my list? Guests include directors, screenwriters, actors, podcasters, musicians, authors, and even a professional wrestler. Subscribe to the Force 5 podcast, and you won't just be a listener, you'll be a list nerd. The Force 5 podcast, available wherever you're listening now.
И тогда, значит, произошла первый показ.
In May, there was a big premiere in Moscow Film House, like the main house. So everybody was coming to see the Scandals picture. People have heard about it. You know, what is it going to be? It was full house. Right after it, one of the main influential writers ended up writing an article in Pravda, which was kind of a government-sanctioned newspaper, but a really good article about the movie. So meanwhile, the main person who was responsible for releasing all the films, like imagine there's like a minister of film, right? He was sitting there, he goes, I have no idea what to do with this picture. Should I just bury it? Like I can't release it. This is crazy. So somebody told him to send it to Gorbachev. And at that time of censorship, you know, even since the time of Stalin, they would send, like, if they didn't know what to do with the film, it had to go to the highest person, so nobody would be responsible for making that decision, you know, but the highest government official. So he knows for sure Gorbachev saw the film. He knows the story is true because he ended up talking to him later when he was making the Ugly Swans, I'm sorry. So Gorbachev watched it, and then he ends up calling the minister of film and says, finally, you understand the new mentality. This is perestroika. Things are changing. Big congratulations. So the Minister of Film now orders 2,000 copies to be sent all over the country. It's a big premiere. Next thing you know, Mr. Lopushansky finds himself in Cannes. So imagine, like, in the shortest period of time of thinking you're going to go from going to jail, and for sure this picture will never see a light of day, to such tremendous success.
подниматься по этой дорожке и так далее. Вот и всё. Вот
Wow,
такое было.
какая история сумасшедшая. The funny story, funny side story. First time he goes to Cannes, he's a young, obviously it's Soviet times, director. So he does not bring a bow tie with him. So as they're walking up the steps, the translator says to him, "Where's your bow tie?" He's like, "What bow tie? I don't have a bow tie." She's like, "You need a bow tie. They're not going to let you in." So they started running all over Cannes looking for bow tie at 6 p.m., which you can imagine how much money that would cost. So his translator ends up going to a boutique and explaining to the owner that he's a young Soviet director that didn't bring a bow tie. So the owner gifts him a bow tie, and to this day, Mr. Lopushansky has it as a relic that he says from his first time going to Cannes and not bringing a bow tie.
Тот взял и подарил мне бабочку. И так она у меня хранится. Об этом первом конце.
Is it his lucky bow tie now?
Это теперь ваш счастливый bow tie?
Да, конечно.
Yes, of course.
I am curious because he was talking about there being no, heroes, villains, that the Americans had to be to blame. Is that why so many of the names in Dead Man's Letters are anglicized? They don't seem like they're Soviet names whatsoever.
Там нет вообще никаких имен. Это я сделал специально. Дело в том, что в справке о фильме, которое писала Госкино, редактора, они...
So he wanted to make a universal story, so he did not want to have any names at all, so anybody could steal the story. And of course, as a part of the, Soviet censorship process, they would always write in names, preferably English or American or whatever.
I'm also curious about the way that it was shot and if the tinted black and white was purely an aesthetic choice or if it was also an economical choice as well.
Нет, это был сознательный эстетический выбор, потому что снималось на черном.
It was an aesthetics choice that it was shot on black and white film, but it was printed on color film to create that particular hue that he was looking for, the yellowish.
Oh, okay, because it's gorgeous. It looks wonderful.
Да, я это очень люблю. В принципе, я именно...
He loves that move, and he's used it quite a bit after that.
After Letters from a Dead Man, was he now able to make whatever he wanted to make, or was there still a struggle to make something like Visitor to a Museum?
Возможности, во-первых, уже была реальная перестройка.
After Dead Man's Letters and the success and the con, every door was open. Plus, it was 1987, so things were really truly changing. You could feel it in the Soviet Union. So after that, he had quite a bit of people wanting to work with him, people offering him money. And he said that A Visitor to a Museum was the only picture that he ever made that had no financial restraints. He had the budget that he wanted to have to make that film.
What's it like for him to have that kind of freedom then with his second film?
Что я почувствовал? Я почувствовал, что это именно так, как должно быть на самом деле.
It was a breath of fresh air, that this is what movie making is supposed to be like. That's what it's supposed to feel like. It's just, complete freedom. He said, unfortunately, that didn't last longer than 3 or 4 months. Because after that, there were some, commercial elements that went into play. And eventually, again, there was some censorship element again. But those 3 or 4 months, he really felt like that's the way it's supposed to be.
Финально использовал это время в том плане, и я, и мои коллеги, многие, что я снял именно то, что я хотел снять. И у меня есть подозрение, что я такого рода фильмы, как «Посетитель музея» или как «Русская симфония», как «Конец века», я не смог бы снять даже и на Западе, потому что, там другие ограничения, связанные с коммерцией, вообще существование авторского кино довольно непростое, а фильмы довольно дорогие. Поэтому, я использовал в этом плане это время, насколько удалось.
He used that time to the maximum to really try to achieve as much artistic freedom as possible. For instance, he thinks he wouldn't have been able to do that overseas, because there were thousands of crazy people in that film, and then real people that were dressed like them that were watching them. Then there was a boat that they took all the way across country to appear in one water scene, and then to bring it back to appear in a land scene. It was just a lot of really, really intricate details that he was able to execute, and that was truly artistic freedom.
20 years after his first film, he would return to Strugatsky. He would return to, just a lot of the same themes with something like The Ugly Swans. And I'm curious, in those 20 years, what that experience was like for him now working in 2006 with that film.
Это было очень непросто, потому что после писем мертвого человека.
So after Dead Man's Letters, he had a great relationship with Strugatsky. Arkady Strugatsky, called this one of the best films, and they offered to write a script for him as a gift. We'll write a script, you're a young director, we'll see where it goes. So they wrote a script called Cloud.
Без договора, бесплатно. Вот в знак уважения напишем, а там видно будет. Это был царский подарок, как у нас говорят.
And what had happened is he didn't like it.
Конечно, тогда они спросили, а что бы вы хотели из наших произведений экранизировать? И я сказал, вот «Гадкие лебеди». И они написали сценарий, который назывался «Туча». Он опубликован у них под этим названием, его можно увидеть в книге.
So now imagine that scenario. Right, so Strugatsky's offered them a script, they wrote it, he does not like it, it's not the movie that he wants to make. So at the time that they were asking him what he likes, he said, 20 years back then, he said it was The Ugly Swans.
You won't see the engineer that slams the Nissan Rogue's door 13,920 times. Or the corrosive chamber that simulates 15 years of life in 5 months. Or the Rogue heat-baked for over 300 combined hours. What you will see is a vehicle that can take punch after punch and keep rolling. Nissan, #1 in new vehicle quality among mainstream brands by J.D. Power. We put it through the worst, so you get its best. For J.D. Power 2025 U.S. Initial Quality Study Award information, visit jdpower.com/awards. Awards based on 2025 model year. Newer models may be shown.
Have you ever wanted to dive deeper into the horror movies you love? Beyond the Blood is a horror podcast for fans who want more than just surface-level screams. We do deep dives into the movies that shaped us, digging into director commentaries, behind-the-scenes stories, deleted scenes, and the special features that most people skip. Each episode is a love letter to the genre. We break down how these films were made, the creative risks that paid off or didn't, and the lasting impact they've had on the genre as a whole. From 70s slashers to modern nightmares, we celebrate the craft, chaos, and characters that keep us coming back. If you're the kind of fan who rewatches movies with the commentary on, or you simply grew up in the video store horror aisle, the Beyond the Blood podcast was made for you. New episodes every single week. Subscribe, and let's dig deep. Welcome to the Beyond the Blood podcast.
But they write this other thing, he doesn't like it. So they were very upset with him, and they had a separation for 20 years based on that particular thing that had happened.
Да, мы приехали с моим продюсером Андреем Сигли, мы приехали к Стругацким, и, в общем, Стругацкому уже Борису Натановичу, и вот сказать, что вот хотим сделать так. Он отнесся неожиданно вдруг положительно к этому и сказал...
20 years later, he visits with Boris Strugatsky and says, with his producer, and says, we want to make this. And then he gave his blessing, and he said, just make sure you kind of keep the script a little bit farther from the book. And he said he attributes that to that time Boris's experience of dealing with people that are making films based on books. And he basically gave him the blessing, and he was able to start working on this film.
I don't know if it's a universal thing, but in America we say never work with children and animals when it comes to show business. But he's worked many times with children, or at least twice that I know of. And I was curious what his experience was working with those kids on both Dead Man's Letters and and The Ugly Swans.
Ну, я бы так сказал, что, во-первых, чисто драматургически. Дети — это абсолютная ценность. Поэтому, когда создаете...
When you're making things that are philosophical and have a higher meaning, kids are often used, and it's extremely important to use kids. It brings a certain level of emotion that is kind of, you need to convey, right? You're making things about the world, and there needs to be children in it. So basically, working with kids, he said he had a couple different experiences, and it's finding the right approach, right? So choosing the right kids. So for instance, in Dead Man's Letters, obviously he needs to get kids to play kind of an emotional role after nuclear fallout. So he created an exercise in which he would make them stare into one spot without blinking. And he was able to convey that basically through working with their faces, right? They were not saying anything, but he was creating their faces over and over and over again. So it's that approach in the exercise. However, when he was doing the Ugly Swans, he needed highly intellectual children. So where he casted them, how he found those children, they absolutely understood the meaning and they were able to convey it. So there were different kind of techniques that he used.
Для них нет никаких проблем понять интеллектуальный смысл, философский смысл, то, что написано.
And who he casted and the approach that he took to the kids. So, but it's important to work with children because it's a certain representation of a character.
So I'm very sorry that I haven't been able to track down his latest feature Through a Black Glass, but I'm very curious how that experience was and how that was received.
Последним по времени, да, это ну, он снимался 3 года. Вот, это, понимаете, долгий период. Кстати, мы послали сегодня ему...
So he said it took him 3 years, which is a long time. You know, in today's world, it's kind of really, really hard. Financial problems, commercial problems. It's a different time to release a film. You know, you're not really...
Как снимался, ну, как все фильмы сейчас снимаются очень трудно. Проблемы были с финансированием и очень ограничены.
Probably able to do all the things that you want to do. So the film has played in Tallinn, in London, in Tokyo, in Moscow. You know, it had a limited release, but now it's up for sale.
В фильме, мне кажется, высказался мой большой друг Дмитрий Быков. Это он известный.
A really popular writer and a university professor, Dmitry Bykov.
Дмитрий Быков. Вот. И он как-то проанализировал очень правильно ситуацию трагических предчувствий.
Probably had the best review of the film, he said, and they send you some press to read about the film.
Понимаешь, определенный риск дальнейшего взаимоотношения и с прокатом, и с Министерством культуры, которое финансирует фильм.
You know, it's in today's world, you know, it's, again, tragic understanding of each other.
И, в общем-то, фильм, так сказать, уже вышел в мир, он сейчас уже продается где-то, он был в Таллине на кинофестивале, в Лондоне он был.
It's probably he said the best way that he described it.
Была премьера, вот, и в России был ограниченный прокат, небольшой, но все-таки был прокат. Сейчас он на платформе, я располагаю.
He doesn't seem to show any signs of slowing down. I'm curious what he's working on now.
Я пытаюсь создать новый сценарий.
He said that he's working on a new script. He can't talk about what it is because that's not something that he does. And of course, he's continuing to tell the stories. He wants to tell the stories in his way.
Ну что, ну такая судьба, такой путь, я думаю, это...
Using his voice, just like, you know, any creator, any filmmaker, you know, would want to do that.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Jen, as well as his time. This has been a real pleasure talking with you and him.
Right.
Thanks.
Right.
All right, big thanks to Konstantin Lopushansky and Jenny Fedorovich and Mike for doing the interview and sitting down and talking with us about the film. Mike, I am curious for you, what is kind of the seminal nuclear war, nuclear fallout piece of fiction that comes to mind for you when you think of that kind of, I guess, subgenre?
So it's like, what, post-apocalyptic, but by way of nuclear Armageddon kind of thing?
Yeah.
Gosh, the first thing that jumped into my mind, I know we were talking about Threads and The Day After earlier, but the first thing that jumped into my mind was A Boy and His Dog.
See, I've never seen that film. That's Don Johnson, right?
That is Don Johnson.
Yeah.
And there's a small role in there by a man who recently we talked about because he committed suicide on an episode of Barney Miller.
Oh, really?
Yes, he plays a character named Fellini in that, who is a enforcer in the underground world of Kansas that Jason Robards runs.
The underground world of Kansas.
Yes.
But that's based off Harlan Ellison, though, right?
That is, yes.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Father Malone has seen it.
Well, I'm sure. Father Malone and Harlan Ellison, that's like peanut butter and jelly, man.
That's like peas and carrots.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you something. Trying to think for myself what would be the kind of like the apocalyptic choice. You know, thinking about it, and we're talking like because of a nuclear... I haven't seen The Day After, and I really need to fix that. And I've seen, I don't know, it might be Akira.
Well, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I mean, you could do like a whole TV movie month sometime. There are some really good TV movies out there.
The Postman.
I mean, The Road made me want to kill myself when I watched that.
Holy shit. Okay, I'm taking that back. Cormac McCarthy's The Road is, without a doubt, a fucking punch in the chest of a film and of a book. Oh, man. Holy shit.
I would say it's more of a kick in the dick.
I mean, it's a kick in the teeth. It's a kick. It is a visceral gut punch as a book, and as a film, they managed to copy it and like capture that intensity really well. Because I remember I read the book, like right when it came out. Oh God, I feel like it came out like in the mid 2000s, and I read it and I was like, good God, like this is. It doesn't feel like anything else that Cormac McCarthy has done, but at the same time, it's exactly the kind of thing that Cormac McCarthy is known for writing. And yeah, that's a good choice. That's not like a The Matrix or The Terminator. Which
did he use punctuation in that book?
Why did he not use punctuation in a lot of his other stuff?
I think I remember reading that he doesn't like punctuation sometimes. I mean, it's not like the movie and book or the book Blind. Do you remember that one with oh God, what's her name? The redhead from
Amy Adams.
No, the redhead from The Big Lebowski. Why am I blanking on her name?
Julianne Moore.
Julianne Moore, where it's like the population has gone blind. The book of that had no punctuation in it.
Weird. Yeah, I don't remember. I would have to go back and reread it. Have you read No Country for Old Men?
I have not.
Okay.
For Gary Oldman?
No Country for Gary Oldman. Yeah, so Cormac McCarthy, for those of you that don't know, also wrote No Country for Old Men, which I think works better as a book, not as a movie, for many reasons, namely the outro monologue that Tommy Lee Jones gives in the movie is not great because it makes no sense if you watch it in film form, but in the book it's great. And so Cormac McCarthy he has this knack for writing these stories with these characters that feel really alive, and The Road is no different. And, you know, I don't want to say that The Road maybe copped a little bit from Dead Man's Letters, but it's got that same feeling to it of hopelessness, but like that nugget of hope that's stuck in there, but just surrounded by hopelessness.
Yeah, some of those shots towards the end of the kids in the wind and what looks like the nuclear winter, I mean, that is just... It's really kind of scary.
Yeah. The cinematography and the visuals in this film, I mean, again, look, the visuals in this film are amazing. No question there. No disagreement, I would assume. But the plot is also interesting, and so it's not just living off of the visuals alone, because it's a visually impressive film. There are a lot of sequences that are... Like, I was just thinking to myself as I was watching, like, how did you film this? Like, how did you manage to film this on a budget and it turned out so well and it looks so real? Like, where were they filming this, for fuck's sake? You know what I mean? Like, if I'm watching a film and asking myself, where did you film this? How did you manage to pull this off? That is the sign of a good film, because I know they didn't use CGI because this is 1986 and it's being filmed in the Soviet Union.
Right. And don't forget, this is his first feature-length film.
Which is even more impressive. Yeah. And it feels like a complete package. I mean, again, look, it's not going to be for everybody. It's not going to be for most people, because most people are going to have to go out of your way to find this. But if you take the time, you sit down, and you really commit yourself to this, it's an hour and 28 minutes long. It is a interesting, film that, again, you could do Stalker and this film as a double feature, and I think it would play really well as kind of like back to back.
Totally agree.
So what would you give the film out of 5, Mike?
I'd probably give it at least like a 3.5, if not a 4 out of 5.
Yeah, I would give it a 4 as well. It's a really interesting look at society post-nuclear war. And again, I really like the conceit that the nuclear war happened because a guy couldn't spit out his coffee fast enough, which, as dark and fucked up as that is, I think that that's really funny. And it's also really kind of, that feels a little bit more topical than one might think.
Right.
Alexa, no! Oh, I figured she was going to say something because she's literally sitting in my office right here. She decided not to say anything. So,
funny.
Yeah. So let's take a break and we'll play a preview for the next Kulturecast. That's right, on the next Kulturecast, we're going to be talking about another foreign sci-fi film. We're going to be talking about Bunker Palace Hotel. You picked that one as well. You picked all these movies.
I did. I hope you enjoyed that one as much.
And we're going to be joined by our good friend and yours, the one and only Father Malone.
Oh, he's going to hate it.
Is he?
I don't know.
He loves all kinds of stuff, man. He's not a harsh critic.
That's good.
Yeah, that's good. He's not like Richard Hatem. That guy's the harshest critic of them all. God, Richard Hatem. Every time he comes in, just bum, 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 Richard Hatem. Oh, man. Until that, and you're going to be joining me as well, obviously, Mike. So that goes without saying during Microwave March. Until then, Mike, where can people find you?
Well, they can find me over at the Projection Booth Podcast, which is available, strangely enough, at projectionboothpodcast.com. And they can find me with you, Chris, on a podcast that we do with our friend in Christ, Father Malone, which is called Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast. And folks can find us together, Chris, you and me, as we talk about Barney Miller in the Life and Times of Captain Barney Miller podcast.
Yeah, that replaced the Kolchak tapes.
That is correct.
Pour one out for our friend Kolchak. Would the universes implode if somehow Darren McGavin was on an episode of Barney Miller?
Oh, that'd be too weird.
Oh my god! As a character wearing a pork pie hat.
Oh wow!
And a baby blue suit. CGI added in when the other Kolchak walks by.
That's right.
Yeah, boy.
And he looks at him and smiles.
Oh, what a fucking mess. As for myself, you can find me here. You can also find me on Chronicles from the Crypt, where I talk about Tales from the Crypt with our good friend Father Malone, and the one-season show where Jess Byard and I talk about TV shows that only lasted one season. Patreon.com/Kulturecast is where you can find Patreon stuff if you want to be in on that. Big thanks, as always, to you, Mike, for joining me.
Always a pleasure.
And big thanks, as always, to Tiger Blood Jewel for the music for the Kulturecast, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Audio commentary. It's a dying art form, but here at One Track Mind, I, your wonky yet affable host Ryan Luis Rodriguez, analyze film through the prism of these embryonic forms of podcasting, one audio commentary at a time. Masterpieces, crapster pieces, live action, animation, cult classics, films literally no one has ever heard of. No track is too small, and no track is too big. Join me and my guests from the entertainment world as we keep these features alive every other Tuesday. Hey, who else is going to discuss Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey one week and Citizen Kane the next? Us, that's who. Sure, you have to put up with my voice, but there's a certain give and take in this industry. That's One Track Mind, part of the Someone's Favorite Productions family and available wherever you get your podcasts.